fame is a byproduct of successful art.
Stephen Adams is an award-winning producer and talent manager with a career spanning film, television, and visual effects. Stephen has produced several notable projects, including the Netflix original Rodney King, and served as executive producer on countless independent films. His impressive background in visual effects includes work on well-known projects from blockbusters to award-winning films, including Avatar, Life of Pi, Thor, Green Lantern, and The Artist. In addition to his work in film, Stephen has produced several television projects and is a co-founder of the Holly Shorts Film Festival in Hollywood, which is where Darren caught up with him.
We do not audition for the role, we audition for the career. The job is the audition. That's it.
Stephen, it's great to have you on the WeAudition Show.
Great to be here, man.
So you're a manager, you're a producer, you're involved in film festivals. What's getting you excited right now, though?
Wow, I guess, you nailed it. I like being deeply involved with film. I like being deeply involved with creatives and creativity. And so in a way, we've created a world with that I've got a kind of a network of festivals around the world that I'm involved with. Holly Shorts, part of my role with Holly Shorts was to make it more global and to extend the footprint. We started celebrating at Cannes and in London, and now we're doing the first Holly Shorts London in December.
With BAFTA, right?
We're now BAFTA qualifying.
BAFTA qualifying, yeah.
Yeah, which is a big deal. And I'm also on the board of the Durban Film Mart in South Africa. I'm involved with AFRIF in Nigeria. I mean, I do a lot with festivals around the world, and also Content London, which is a TV summit that happens every December. I'm on their advisory board too.
So really, is the film festival footprint, is that something that you're excited to build further? And how does that work with your talent? Because you manage talent as well, right?
Well, I do. And I think it's a great world for them, because I mean, if I'm always immersed in either established or emerging talent in whatever region, it creates opportunities for the talent themselves, my talent, my clients, to come into a world that is very open to them and one in which we have a lot of influence. So I think they can just come and relax and be who they are, and whatever happens is supposed to happen.
I mean, I've always found that fascinating about you as a talent myself, seeing a manager. One of the things I respect about you is I see you at every festival, and I think that a good manager should be there because that's where opportunities are happening for their clients. And a lot of managers, a lot of agents, and a lot of talent themselves, they don't see that side of the festivals where it's a place to actually nurture opportunities to come out of it, versus the talent that says, I'm only going to go to a film festival when my film's in it. What do you say to those people?
Well, I have a lot to say about all of the things you just mentioned. First of all, that thing about I'm not going until I'm in a festival. Well, if you don't go, it may never happen.
I think it probably won't happen, actually.
Right. Yeah. Because if you don't go, it may never happen. Why am I saying this? Because you need to kind of take the ego out of the equation. And I am saying that I'm calling that statement out as an egocentric statement, one that is not confident enough. You need to be humble. Go and just watch films and fall in love with films and fall in love with the people who created them and have a real conversation with them, artist to artist. That is the way to navigate a film festival. I've seen big stars, come in, in disguise with a hat on, watching a film, loving it, not trying to make any attention, but going to have a really heartfelt conversation with a director or a writer or the other artists who are working in those films, or a set designer or a costume designer. This is the point of going to a festival, not to be front and center.
Right. And I've always said to people, if you're waiting to that moment to be front and center, if everyone thought like you, there'd be no one watching the films, number one.
Right.
And the second mistake I see people make really is you wouldn't get in a car on the first day of your driving test. And so when you have that film at Cannes, when you have that film at Sundance, don't you want to already understand the landscape and not go in blind?
Exactly.
Because it's a whole ecosystem, isn't it?
But I think this is the thing that people don't understand. These festivals, as you mentioned, are not just ecosystems. They are elaborate. There are multiple things happening. They're bewildering when you first go there. Even if you are being guided, you still don't know where you are. It's like being a 3-year-old at a carnival.
Really?
Daddy says you're going to get on this ride, but you're like, well, I don't know what's going on at all.
And you end up waiting in line for the wrong ride because you're like misinformed as well.
Exactly.
And the other thing is interesting. You mentioned about the celebrities coming in disguise and having these conversations. Equally, I've seen actors that are nowhere near that level act like that. They make out like they're the big shot. And that's the way to do it. And then, you know, I got to Cannes this year and I'm in a bar and there's Ron Howard and there's John Voight and they're just mixing in with people. And it's an environment where you can mix and mingle, which I think a lot of people don't understand. They think that there's some sort of VIP-ness about it that they can't access before they're in that film.
In fairness, there is VIP-ness about it.
Of course there is, but still it's all the environment, right?
But the truth is, if you come in as an artist, then an artist and creativity is an equalizer. And if you have a serious conversation from your perspective with a fellow artist, that can be incredible. And I think people just want to be met on that level, to your point. If you come in being the king or queen of the red carpet, you know, that is fine. But you better have a reason for doing it, because in and of itself, you are basically reducing yourself to a pretty face and not much more. When in fact, this is a very serious arena for creativity, and I think you can learn from watching the greats at work, or even attempts at something that isn't necessarily successful, but is noble in its own effort.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're someone that's very, very good at this, what I'm about to say next. How important do you think it is for an actor to build long-standing relationships in the industry?
Extremely important. I mean, nobody does this alone. All of us are meant to be in collaboration. And one of the things I love about Tom Cruise, for example, is who was still the ultimate movie star. He talked about producing and he talked about production. And he said, you know, the thing that people have to remember is that even a person who is just bringing you water is making a film. Even someone who is taking trash out is making a film. Every single bit of it is as important as the other, because if one leaves, everything else begins to fall apart. And you need to show respect to every single aspect of it, because we're all in a common purpose together. And don't overestimate the fact that just because you're in front of the camera, that you're not the only important thing on that set. And that was kind of an interesting, eye-opening comment from someone who occupies the position that he does. He really is genuinely respectful to every aspect, every iota of what it takes to manufacture a film, because that's what it is, manufacturing. So, you know, I think this old-fashioned insistence on hierarchies and wanting to be a star is a mistake, because fame is a byproduct of successful art.
I love that. Fame is a byproduct of successful art.
Yeah.
Is that a quality that you look for when you're signing a talent?
Absolutely. I mean, you can be preoccupied with that, but that's not for me. I mean, when we do it very well, as you know, but it is not, you can't live inside of that condition. You've got to be, you know, off the pedestal and in the dirt, so to speak, and making things.
So the talent that you take on, you would really look for, are they making the work the priority? And yes, as you say, the byproduct is the fame from that.
Yeah. I mean, you know, we're fortunate enough to work with a lot of very successful people who we are helping to make more successful, but we're not preoccupied with our visibility. We're preoccupied with what we're producing, creating.
And you also produce, don't you?
Yes.
Talk to us about that, because a lot of our listeners might not understand the difference between an agent and a manager. We have a lot of international listeners.
Right.
So let's talk about that, but also talk about how producing fits in with managing. And do your clients get a first look at those projects, for instance? Are you working with your clients to produce those projects?
Well, let's see, that's about 4 questions here. So let me unravel them.
Let's first talk about the difference between
a manager. What the hell is a manager?
Yeah. What's a manager?
Versus an agent. I mean, I would say that, you know, given the Hollywood circumstances which we are sitting in, managers are people who are generally called personal managers, which means they're engaged with a small group of people in a very macro way. We cover a lot of ground with them. We help do the blueprint for the career, bring in other team members, and help move things forward. Agents, you know, agencies tend to be larger, but for survival. So when you have thousands of clients, you cannot spend an entire day on a client, or a week on one client, or half the time is on this one situation you're trying to resolve, unless they're a movie star. So we are helping them to create a world that is theirs, imagine a new reality that we're creating together. And then, yes, naturally out of that comes producing. My signature with most of my clients is that I'm an artist-driven producer. So whether I'm representing an actor, a writer-director, or a company, the goal is usually to create something. And so, in one instance, I've represented visual effects houses and represented them to the U.S. studio system. And then when the jobs come in, we produce those. We have a post house in South Africa. And then, we get jobs for them and function as EPs on that. With clients, I would say almost all my clients are actively developing projects. And so I'm involved with that. One client has a 3-picture deal with Netflix as a director. So we get things done, and that's the point.
Do you see that as a more important thing moving forward? Because the industry is changing, as we know. Should actors be looking out for more producing, writing, directing opportunities?
I say yes. And the industry is changing, to your point. I mean, we are in an unprecedented change right now. We have this great retraction of expense in reaction to the overspending of traditional Hollywood competing with Netflix. That has resulted in massive firings and layoffs and reductions, if not the dismissal of almost all the deals. And everything's being recalibrated on a smaller level, smaller orders, smaller budgets. And so at the same time, you also have this internationalization of taste through streaming. And so I think inside of all that, there's an opportunity. While this corporate side corrects itself, I think as creatives, we have to rise up and be ready for a return and or come up with a model that works for us that's outside of the system. Independents have always found a way to make things happen. I mean, people forget that before Weinstein turned independent film back into a star system, it was all about scrappy people making films and, emerging successfully and creating the new pathways. So we can do it.
I do think the sea change that we're seeing, a lot of people I speak to are waiting for it to come back in inverted commas. But when you study what's been going on in film, and like you said, the overspending, this sort of Silicon Valley model in Hollywood, I think a lot of good came out of that. Like I feel like people have forgotten that Netflix also paved the way for many different formats of entertainment, many different lengths. They allow people to experiment with genres. They definitely brought a lot more diversity to the screen in many ways and took risks on things that the traditional system wouldn't necessarily allow with their very strict Excel spreadsheets.
Right.
But then the flip side of that is, like you said, the overspending. And I think now everything's scaling back in sort of a kind of funnel system where, okay, what is working guaranteed? And outside of that, we've got to sort of make our own way somehow, haven't we? And find the cream that rises to the top again.
I think that the problem, you put your finger on it, the problem is I think the system wants a guarantee. And they've already shown that the things that they called guarantees are not working. I mean, with all due respect, these bloated, $100 million films that tell the same story over and over again have started to alienate the audiences. The audiences have shown you with their wallets that they don't want to see this. And at the same time, you have these crazy things where, for example, a Barbie will succeed and everyone say, oh my God, female driven. I'm like, well, yeah, obviously you need to pay attention to that. It's not an anomaly. It's actually an indicator, and we should be paying more attention to that. The same thing with this insistence on what is, traditional casting, default Eurocentric. There's no reason why you can continue to talk about that when the full world is a very different spectrum, and it makes no sense to ignore those demographics. So I think that there's a lot of money being left on the table. I think that within that gap, it's a time for creatives to step up and fill it up and show them that they're ready. Yeah. And they're ready to do things that the world will find fascinating.
Well, so you mentioned casting earlier there. Do you think that the casting has become more global, and is there now more opportunity for actors not in the key centers?
I think we're getting there. I think, this industry still has a long way to go. It has never really been accurate at all. And it tends to, it still has, you have issues of beauty, age, ethnicity, ability, all these things that are really make up the human spectrum need to be more authentically woven into the way we tell stories. I think they'll be a lot more interesting if we actually are, we're not, it doesn't mean that we're doing charity. The stories have to be told really, really well. Right. But I think that these other perspectives have yet to really be seen in a way that traditional casting allows certain people to have the story and the limelight.
So we're sitting in Hollywood right now, the world famous Chinese theater where Holly Shorts is. If an actor's listening at home, do they need to be in Hollywood? Do they need to be in New York? Or can we still get a good career from outside those places now?
I have mixed feelings about this. I think on the one hand, it's never been easier to make yourself known to the world from wherever you sit. We live in the digital age. I mean, the things that we can do for ourselves were not possible a very short time ago. You can, if you have a will to be known in any country in the world, you can. You can connect with people in a meaningful way, in an authentic way, in a very clearly artistically driven way. I still feel, though, that New York is one center and LA is another. And there's something magical about what happens in this city. It is incredible when you're in a room full of hundreds of creative people who, are directed and want to make things happen.
Do you have a moment in mind where you've seen some of that magic happen in person?
I mean, I've seen it happen at this Holly Shorts Festival.
Tell me about that.
There's just when you're in certain rooms and you draw to people's attention who they're sitting with and what's happening, or when you're in a screening and everybody's like, "Oh my God, this person has an incredible vision," and it starts to happen. We're an Oscar qualifying film festival and a BAFTA qualifying film festival. The eyes of these groups are on what happens here, but a lot of those voters live in the city. So I don't know. I just think there's something about Hollywood that has not gone away.
Yeah, and I think that sort of is replicated around the world in the film festivals. It's sort of mini Hollywood on tour.
Right.
Because I know certainly the parties we do for WeAudition, one of the things we often get asked is, why do you run these events? They're free for actors. We put everything on. And it's because we see those moments of connection happen and something magical comes from that. A person has a conversation and then it takes its own life, and these great moments down the road. It's not always instant, but you'll come back to those people and realize that some project happened because these two people connected with another person. And I think that definitely does still happen in LA and New York and places like that. Yeah,
it does on a daily basis. And sometimes I've been in places where I'm sitting in a cafe and I'm like, they're so-and-so and I want to talk to them. And, and then a conversation turns into like a group, and a group is like buzzing because, there's some real potential in this combination of people. And, to your point about WeAudition parties, I mean, I've been, very impressed and have enjoyed so many of these events with you at Cannes, and so many of those people that I've met there are here in Hollywood. And I do think that there's an interesting festival tribe of people who travel, who meet, who put the effort, because it isn't like we're just all going to be shiny. We're going because it's like going to adult camp.
I always say it like that. It's like going to camp. You see your friends, you see your business colleagues, but you're connecting on a regular basis. And I think that familiarity, again, over time, I know people that go to one festival and say, well, nothing happened. I'm like, no, we got to be coming for 20 years to forge these relationships.
You got to put the time and you got to invest. And, none of this stuff is overnight. I mean, once in a while, maybe. Yeah. But, we're not dealing in 1929 Hollywood that told all those stories that people still believe, because that's something we have to deconstruct. A lot of us are still operating on a mythology that was created 100 years ago. Overnight success, discovered at a fountain. She walked into that room and we said, oh, she's perfect. These things were never true even when they happened, but they made great press.
Mythology,
and people still believe it.
Yeah.
That she was sitting, she was a Hollywood, what was it? Lana Turner was at Hollywood High School and went down and had a ice cream soda and somebody discovered her.
Right.
And meanwhile, she'd been acting for years, but what's a better story? That's
the thing, and we're storytellers. So of course they're going to, and I still see people mention these days, like they'll talk about a certain star. They're like, oh, this guy popped out of nowhere. And I'm like, this guy did 100 episodes of television, just television you didn't see.
Yeah.
And that's the key. And even if there are those anomalies, like you do get the people that you hear about that they were discovered somewhere and then they got a hit show that no one knew was going to be a hit, by the way. It was as equally possible it wouldn't be. And those stories are still the anomaly.
Yeah.
You still can't replicate it. The one person that started meditating and suddenly was a series regular.
I mean, honestly, if that were the case, we'd all be series regulars.
We'd all be series regulars because we're all doing those things completely.
But I mean, and even when you look back to the days of like a show like Friends, which was considered normal back then, where you could just put quote unquote virtual unknowns into a series. It was kind of the end of that, but those guys had also been acting for a long time before that.
They'd done their work.
So it wasn't like they just got selected and were lucky. They'd done decades of work, even though they were fairly young.
Well, and also there's a difference between being familiar to the general public and being familiar to the industry and casting and agents and stuff.
Yes.
You've done your rounds. Like when we used to have a pilot season,
right?
I'd always see British actors come over for the 2 weeks of pilot season.
Right.
And I said to them, what do you think's going to happen? Like, you've got to be in this town for a couple of years I was here for, I think, 2 years before I got into one pilot audition, because it's only once casting know what you can do. They're going to trust you with putting you in front of those people, you know?
Well, this comes back to what you were saying about living here. I think you do need to live here if you really want to take it all the way, because
even with no in-person auditions anymore.
Yeah. Because I think you can still work at it.
Right.
How many casting directors were at our seminar last weekend? 4 of them who stayed and talked to people. They're tired of the isolation too. They like the connecting. This is their passion. I mean, one of the things people forget about casting directors is that I think actors have a tendency to see them as these scary, forbidding entities. But in fact, these are creative people who want to make discoveries. In when they send out a role, we want to see you bring this to life. And there is no right or wrong answer. If it was right or wrong, they just make offers. You know, they want to see what a lot of people do with this work. So this is your chance. And they're passionate about it too, because they're telling the story from a different angle.
Now, you've done a lot of stuff in London as well. Do you think, we have a lot of international members, but a lot of our members are America or London, or England, I should say, not just London. Do you see a difference in the way that casting and agents interact with actors in the UK versus the US?
I do.
What is that like?
I think that the UK is a little more personal. It's a smaller industry. I think there's more time taken, a little bit more care taken. I think because they can. You know, I'm always impressed because British agents read scripts and will actually think about who they're presenting and have really, you know, given it a lot of feeling and a lot of thought. And I'm not criticizing my American counterparts. I think our issue is just the sheer volume of what we have to do. It's, again, why there's not necessarily the culture of management in England. It isn't necessarily as needed, but it is here. And it's not through any fault of the agents. It's just like the enormity of the task of competing for things.
Right, that's a really interesting. I've never thought about it in that way before. I've always thought that the systems just came about on their own way, and America, because the fees are different as well, so it allows for more commissions to be paid in the US, because English agents take the full 20%. But I was really intrigued in what you said about the agents reading more scripts, because I find from a talent point of view, what we were talking about earlier about how actors see casting directors as these scary gatekeepers, and agents as well. I feel like that mentality is a lot more from the UK, where we as talent are more afraid to speak to our managers and agents, and afraid to like speak to casting, and casting sometimes have this kind of don't call us, we'll call you vibe that I personally haven't experienced so much in the US, where I feel like the casting are out there wanting to see talent, wanting to meet talent. They're going to the showcases, they're going, and I'm not saying that for all UK casting directors, but it's certainly a feeling that I think actors have of casting directors there.
Well, I think that there is a difference, and I think some of the things you're saying are accurate. I think here, let's be honest, this is a competitive capitalist society, and we have to compete to succeed. And so it has its impact on everything we do. If you are in a culture where there's some government subsidies, or there's this, that, the other, it's a little cushier, it's a little easier to do it. You know, they're taking twice the commissions that we do. So there's a lot of differences. So when we go out, we fight. We're fighting for our survival. And within that, it makes us excellent, I think. Right.
And you have international clients, right?
I do.
And they live in other places, and you find that easy to manage from where you are?
They live in the UK, they live in France, they live in South Africa, they live everywhere.
Yeah, because you're one of the few people I know that actually have such a broad range of talent across the. And I know a lot of your talent, and they're doing really great, and they have great things to say about.
Well, we work hard
you and the way you work.
I think for me, I've always wanted to have I always wanted to have an international career from the very beginning. I have had an international career in one way or another. But I think this moment with streamers and the connectivity that we're experiencing, which is really the last 7 years, it's been a dream to me, because I could take somebody who's on a hot show that, popped in Spanish language, for example. I have a client who was on the show Money Heist.
Yes, I remember, yeah.
And we can take that visibility and go anywhere with it in a way that was not really possible before streaming. And so it's a dream. Or a client whose film was the number one film on Netflix Africa, and it debuted at number one in 78 countries, at number one on the whole platform. So it's changing things. Like what used to be seen as local is no longer local. Everything's international. So now it's just a question of how far you're willing to push that visibility. I don't think anybody's really yet exploited the streamer visibility in a way that I think is gonna bear some interesting fruit in the next few years.
Well, as a manager, do you go out and look for these clients and then go after them, or do they get recommended to you? How do you acquire people?
Most of my clients, I would say, really almost all of them are recommended.
By who? What type of person?
By other people who know that we might be a good fit. Because my signature is really an international client or largely international client and a client who wants to produce for themselves. Probably not a beginner, usually somebody who's got some momentum and some visibility, who wants to really expand their footprint. That would be the sweet spot.
And so you look to other people that you respect in the industry to funnel those talent into you.
Yeah, I mean, I get unsolicited submissions by the day, about 50 to a day.
A day?
Yeah. And that's just actors. I also get scripts every day, or inquiries wanting to submit. And it's unfortunate because I can't really look at them. I think that there's so much of it that you kind of it has to be referred, I think, in a way. I think that, I guess for me, it's such a strong commitment. It's like I don't look at my relationships with my actors as being something for a certain amount of time. I look at it for hopefully being a lifetime relationship. So I kind of do want to frame a reference.
If you'd like to join the WeAudition community, go to weaudition.com/show to get 25% off. Now back to the show.
So if I'm the actor listening to this and I'm in a place in my career, I've done a few bits of work, I've not really popped off yet, and I want to sign with a manager like you, what's your advice? What should I do as my next steps? Knowing that if I do email you, it's probably not going to be seen. And if it does, it doesn't come from a referral. Well, how do I get that referral?
Well, it doesn't mean that it's not necessarily going to be it's going to be looked at. Sure. I just can't really take on most beginners. I can't really there's no bandwidth for it. And there's, it's a long investment. I would say, just make me aware of your work. I mean, we do look at all those things. Say hello, meet me at a festival, say hello. I mean, because the time may not be now, but the time may come. And I don't think there's anything wrong with just getting to know people, as you mentioned. Take the long vision. Everybody kind of wants to score right away. And in fact, if you kind of understand that this is not the right mode, like everybody wants to be at CAA, but the fact is when you're ready to go to CAA,
they come find you. Right.
So you don't really need to worry about it.
Yeah.
And when you have that kind of momentum, people will start saying, hey, you should talk to him. You should talk to her. It happens.
Yeah. And so that talent that I mentioned earlier, sitting at home thinking that as long as they're getting out there, making authentic relationships, concentrate on the work, it's sort of a trust in the patience.
It's the trust in the patience. And also I think that you have to remember something. I think within this, we have to address this little myth. Having a rep is not like, okay, I've made it and now this company is going to do all the work for me and all I have to do is show up. Big mistake. Look at the equation, 90%, 10%. We need people who are constantly working, who are constantly thinking, who are constantly growing and evolving, working out. If you were a gifted athlete that just sat on their butt, you'd be bested by somebody who's maybe not so naturally gifted, but puts the work in. And so that's who wins. And again, it's the long view. 2 years of effort can best God's greatest blessings. You've got to do the work too.
Yeah, it's like staying active in all elements of career. You just had a seminar called The Business of Acting, right?
Yes.
What are some business parts? We understand the craft as actors. What are the business things that you think people generally miss out on that they're not doing enough of?
Well, I think this is, they kind of interweave, but I think that one of the key points was to first of all, really, really get a grasp on the business. Get a grasp on what is going on in the world that you want to be in. Because I don't want to stifle anybody's imagination, but what I prefer to see is somebody envisioning a life based on the tools that are actually available. Like, if you understand the business cold, you can reimagine it. You can think about things that can happen for you within these structures. If you don't know what they are, you're dreaming, and there's a difference.
So you're talking about like following the trades, understanding the industry, knowing who's who, understanding genres. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing the amount of actors I know that they're not regularly reading scripts. They're just waiting for an audition, and they're not even really aware of what's out there and what's audition. They just want to be an actor on a show.
Right. Well, I think that's true. And I think that the step out of that is this: get to know your own taste very intimately. What do you want to do? Who do you want to work with? Track those people. Figure out what it is you want in the optimum point of view. I mean, even if it's 2 lines in a Steven Soderbergh film, that is a move in a direction that you want. But you got to identify the people you want to work with and see what they're actually doing and be realistic about where you are. There was, I had an actor who read for Babylon 7 times. Didn't get the film, but Chazelle clearly,
in the mind
saw something. Like, why would you give somebody 7 auditions if you didn't think they had something? And it was like 7 different characters that could have been at that crazy party sequence. And at the end, they didn't hire him, but they sent a note over saying he really, loved this actor and wants to keep an eye on what he's doing for the future. And that was interesting.
And that's a win for your actor, but also for you as a rep, when you see that come in, you're doing something right.
Absolutely.
That you've picked a good talent that's got prospects, right?
Yeah.
And I say the same in terms of when you get an audition for a universe. Like I audition a lot in the Taylor Sheridan universe. Mm-hmm. And again, when it's one of those shows, you go, okay, I'm going to be fitting in here somewhere.
You're registering in the
exactly.
world. Yeah.
And you want to just see that for what it is and be like, okay, this is something you can focus on. And there's nothing bad about when you don't get the role in that, because that casting director's calling you back in and again. And sometimes you're getting callbacks and sometimes you're getting screen tests, and it's about how you fit in properly, isn't it?
Well, we audition for the role. We do not audition for the role. We audition for the career. The job is the audition. That's it. Do the best audition that you can, period. Anything else is a wonderful byproduct. Right. And I think that can sometimes help people to relieve the pressure. Just do your greatest work. That's it. And when you're done, release it. Easier said than done, but that is true. Because I've seen, again, like I said, multiple auditions and then something happens. Finally, I've had people getting angry, when people brought them back 4 or 5 or 6 times. It starts to, and I can see how I understand it. I do understand it.
Right.
How you can say, what the hell are they doing? Can't they make it? They know me already. Just match me with the sides. But that's not how it works. Yeah. When you're talking about television, you have a casting director, you have possibly a director, you have the writer / showrunner, you have producers above that, and you have executives above that, and all of them have to sign off on these roles. So getting through that world is more than a notion. Even
the upfronts, when they go and sell to the advertisers, there's been stories of advertisers being like, well, we don't like it with that particular cast member,
right,
and threatening to pull a whole ad campaign. So as an actor, you don't really know what goes on.
This is why it's important to understand the business, because when we talk about commercial television, think about what that actually means. Mm-hmm. Commercials are driving that entire business. That is where the money comes from.
Right.
From sponsors who are selling products. And that has always been the case. And so they have a lot to say about things too.
Right.
And you're absolutely right. At the end of the day, we go all the way up the food chain, and then they're like, she's got to go.
And for anyone that doesn't understand what the upfronts are, again, if you're doing your research, it's a time in New York where all of the networks present their new shows to the advertisers that are ultimately going to buy the ads in between those shows. We're not talking about the actors in the commercials. We're talking about the people that are basically funding the schedule.
Right. And that is key to our business in terms of commercial television. It is everything.
Yeah.
So this is something that needs to be comprehended when you enter this. That's why I'm saying don't worry about all those things when you're auditioning. Just do the audition.
Do the good audition.
Because the rest is up the food chain. Any
self-tape tips that people wouldn't already realize or know? Anything you think is different?
I don't know, but my pet peeve is this. If you're going to do a self-tape audition, I would say endeavor to be off book. And if you're not off book, have the sides at eye line, because every time you drop your eyes, you break the scene. And it's maddening when I see talented people like looking down, looking up, looking down, looking up. It's like, you've broken your scene 5 times and now you're just rehearsing. You're not actually acting. And that for me is it drives me. And I actually won't, I've told my clients, I will not turn this in for your sake, because I'd rather ask for more time and have you relax and just spend another couple of hours and then do it.
Yeah.
And do it on the level that we know you're capable of.
I have a slightly controversial opinion about this as well, because as an actor myself, I think that's the job, right? The job is to learn the lines. The job is to embody the character. And I know we've got a recent union rule that says they can't now ask you to learn the lines, but I just think if I was looking at that scene, I'm like, but this is the job. And as much as it might take you a little while to learn those lines, you should be getting better at that the longer your career goes. But secondly, often on a film or TV show, you don't have that long with the real script anyway. So if you can't do it quickly, I would say to the actor that says, well, I don't have time to learn these lines, I can't do it that quickly, then you need to get good at it.
Well, guess what? If you're not able to learn those lines, you're not going to be able to carry a show.
And that's your whole script of that.
You can't even carry an episode if that's what your attitude is. And it is an attitude. I mean, yes, it comes through experience, but you must give yourself that experience. We cannot expect, I keep going back to this athletic analogy, but you can't expect someone to go out onto a playing field and perform on a high level if there is no repetition of work and exercise and practice. So it behooves you to do that. Otherwise, you're not really taking the job seriously, I think.
Yeah.
And that is what it demands from all of us. I mean, I can't phone in what I do, and I expect people who take advantage of my labor to match mine with theirs.
Right, and that's that manager-client relationship again.
Yeah.
If you've got both be on the same train with the same level of effort, and actually the actors, like you said earlier, 90-10 rule.
Yeah.
If you're doing 90%,
I like the other math. 90-20 is better.
Right. Doesn't add up though. But if you're taking 90% of the income as the actor, you got to do 90% of the work. You really do. We do have to. Yeah.
Well, I mean, not really 90% of the work though. It's not true. It's only true when somebody goes into a series. In most cases, we're laboring as representatives far more than the artist does, because it's constant. We're also the first line of rejection. I don't think people understand how much rejection we absorb on a daily basis.
On behalf of us.
On behalf of our clients.
Yeah.
And then we have to reinterpret that into something that actually you can use rather than some blunt dismissal. I have to go, okay, thank you for putting mud in my face. And now I need you to slow down and tell me exactly as much as you can so I can, give my artist something to make sense out of this. If it's just apples and oranges, sometimes that's all it is. Generally, that's usually all it is. If they're younger, there may be things to learn, but I would say generally, if you're at a certain stage in your career, it's about choices and about the overall spectrum, because that's another thing people forget. You may be great and people may agree that it's great, but in the mix, like how do you work with a series regular, or how do you work with the proposed leads of a film? This may not be the right combination.
Yeah. And talking about series regulars, what would you say to an actor that's been doing a bunch of co-stars, guest stars, co-stars, guest stars, and just not making that leap? Is there anything they can do to move up the levels, whether it be from co-star to guest star level and above? Should we be turning work down to get that, or does someone else decide that for us?
Wow, that is a moment that has come in certain careers I've worked with, and it's an interesting moment. Sometimes you have to be bold, and I'm just going to tell him myself. When I've had that situation, I've said, this person's ready and I trust them. I know that when I get this opportunity, they can do it. And I'm going to put my, on the line and go for it. So sometimes I just, you have to beg and plead. Sometimes just listen, give me the side for the guest star role. If this person does not satisfy you, I won't bother you. I won't bother you about them anymore. We'll stay in our lane. And sometimes people are just like, this guy's kind of relentless. All right, let's give him a shot.
And you're talking about, that's what you're saying to the casting or the producers. That's what I'm saying to the
casting director.
Yeah, because you believe in the talent.
And I believe in the talent. You have to be able to push that hard. And sometimes I just tape them and say, listen, I've taken the liberty of putting this person on tape in the guest star role. And I know this is not something you asked for. The client knows that this is not something you asked for. There's no obligation on your part, but indulge me with the 3 minutes it will take you to watch this. And then let me know if you feel like you could either turn this in or have them do it again with your direction.
Now, when I hear a story like that, I think a lot of listeners will be thinking the same thing. That's exactly what we hope and want our manager to be doing. It's often not the reality, is it?
It's hard to do it. I mean, you've got to be willing to fight. And I happen to like to fight a little bit, you know, not all day, but, when it's justified, absolutely. When I've done this from the beginning of my career, what really made me as a manager, one of my first clients who left the business for a variety of reasons, but he was someone I felt was very right for a film. And I hounded this casting director day in and day out for weeks. And there was one day and I thought, I'm just going to leave her alone and she's going to miss me today. And she did. She called. She goes, honey, you didn't call today. And I said, well, I thought I'd give you a break. She goes, I'm going to give you a break. She said, you have this kid come in and read today. And I'm like, it's 11. She goes, yeah, at 3:00. Get him in. If he's supposed to be so great, this is your shot. I had somebody fall out. Take it. Don't say no. And I was like, you're right. I called him. He goes, I'm at the gym. I'm ready. I've been reading the script. I know what you've been doing for the last month. I won't disappoint you.
What happened?
He goes to the meeting. And then an hour later, I get a phone call from the casting director. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. I'm like, what? And she's like, oh, I owe you a huge apology. I've been holding you back for bringing this kid in. He's perfect. I'm taking him to the producer this afternoon. And I was like, what? She's like, I'm not kidding. She goes, I owe you so much. I think this guy's going to get the role. And he did.
That's magical.
He did. It was opposite Hilary Swank. And I was like, oh my God. But it was that kind of persistence. You have to be, if you really believe in somebody, if you know what they can do, that's what emboldens us to be able to put our butts on the line and fight for them.
Are you a phone guy or an email guy?
I'm a phone guy. I like
getting on
I like people to understand that I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
And yes, emails, I can also write a very persuasive email, but those can be ignored. It's hard to get me off the phone if I want something.
Right. Yeah. Hey, I'm learning a lot of tips here for business, actually.
But yeah, I think that's the thing. You got to use your personal force. And, but like I said, that means you're not coming in like looking at the page and you're ready to perform. So yeah, even though this is not required, do it.
So you need to trust in your talent 100%.
Do it.
Yeah.
100%. Give it up 100%. Do not hold back. Do not restrain yourself. Do not say I'd give more if I had the job. This is the job. Do it.
This is the job.
Do it. Bring all the passion. Make them feel like this is something that can slot into their damned film.
That's some great advice there, because I think a lot of people, just hearing you say this is the job, a lot of people are constantly waiting for the job, and they say things like, when I get X, Y, or Z, then I'll do, if I got a job where I needed to use my American accent, I'd work on my American accent, or I'd learn to ride a horse.
It's self-protection and it's laziness. And honestly, nobody hires a rehearsal. They hire a performance.
And we are required as the actors to bring that to it, a performance, not wait to be, of course we have a director, but their role is to direct the vision.
Right.
And I think a lot of actors think their role is to minutely direct the performance.
No,
it's not. They want to
perform. You show your instincts. Let them, I do miss the idea of a live audition with adjustments in the moment. I think actors deserve that. I think that is it's a very difficult task. We have given them recently to do something without anything more than a breakdown.
I sort of find incredible freedom in that, though. Like for me, the self-tapes with the breakdown, yes, you missed the adjustment, but if I take my ego out of it, the adjustment is really me thinking, oh, at least they're going to try and slot me into what it should be in their mind. But actually with the self-tape, I think as a creative, you go, okay, this is the information I've got. And I research to find more information to help build that character out in the world. But then at that point, when I put that self-tape down, I'm like, this is my interpretation of it. And this is what I'm going to bring to the table. And then I think I'm quite good at then going, that's it, forget about it. A lot of actors aren't so good with putting it out into the ether and wondering what went on with it because they don't trust their team. Do you have any advice to the actor that says, well, I do all these self-tapes, but I don't know if they're getting watched. Are they getting watched?
They are getting watched. I mean, I think that this is something that's been asked a lot of people. Are they being watched? The answer is yes. In fact, as far as most casting directors are concerned, live auditions, though we miss them, probably are not going to come back. Taped auditions mean they can see more people. Yeah. Because you're going through these things.
And the convenience level when you're traveling.
And the convenience level. So there is that, plus there's that. If you're good at it, it's an amazing thing. And I also think that people should take the opportunity to do multiple takes, try different things, experiment, push it. You know, if somebody's psychotic, be psychotic, or you can give the subtle, cold-blooded version. I mean, it's up to you. And then you and your rep should, discuss it. Do we want to send all of these to show range? Do we want to send one? Which one is it? That's the fun of being, in a creative engagement with someone, and I think that's maybe a thing that we shift with the job and the relationship with the agent and the manager. I mean, the manager and the client. Yeah.
I mean, the self-tape definitely gives that convenience, like you said. And one of the things I think is good for the industry is you do get to see a wide range of people, which again, talking back to the start with our conversation about diversity and non-geography, a lot more people are able to get a foot in the door that way as well, aren't they? Yes. They don't actually have to live in the cities and be part of that tiny little silo of people that were getting seen.
Listen, I send somebody, possible actors who are everywhere from Barcelona, Cape Town, London, and Los Angeles. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. And I think one was in Johannesburg. All different races, all different kinds of people, but all interesting, viable options for a particular role. And all 5 of them got an audition. And this is an international project. They're like, yeah, this is great. So, I mean, I think this is the plus side.
And do you recommend actors send in tapes earlier than the deadline if they can? Is there any value to that?
Sometimes people drive me crazy with that. Like, I just sent this. I'm like, did you really work on it as long as you should have? The deadlines are also an opportunity. If you feel like this is as good as it can get, I think great. Being on time is important. But remember, the deadline is set for them to be able to have time to evaluate things. So there's a difference between being punctual and rushing. And I think you have to be careful about rushing in order to try to get a job as opposed to taking all the time allotted to create something. So,
do you ever see situations where the early tape got the job though, where they literally have cast it before the deadline? Is there any benefit to getting in early if you're right?
No, because usually even if they have earmarked something, they kind of want to get through all of them because so you may be earmarked, but I don't think that they're going to like, okay, stop, never mind all this.
Because there's a lot of rumors that go around about things like that. And sometimes the casting notices come through with we're looking at tapes, they come in, so please be. And it's one of those things for actors. We've constantly got this juggle of, do we get it in quick? Do we take the requisite time? Do we
take the requisite time if you need it? I mean, yes, there's nothing wrong with being punctual or ahead of the curve. But I think that it's best to take the time you need. As
long as you put a good tape in.
Put good work together. So if you don't need that time, go for it. I mean, this is nothing. I mean, this new situation has created a lot of work for us that we didn't have before. Before it was like get the audition out, and then people were,
and you just hear about it afterwards on the phone when
they would tell us what was happening. Now we're frankly really engaged with it and have to do a lot with it. Sometimes even reading with people, editing. You read with your clients sometimes, yeah.
Or to send them to WeAudition.
Well, yeah, I would prefer
get a
that.
reader on demand over
I
there.
prefer that. I'd rather be getting more auditions than reading with them.
Right, I was going to say that's
But if
better
all else
focus
fails,
of your time, right?
If all else fails, I do what I have to do.
I mean, that's a really proactive manager there, and I love hearing that for your clients.
They know that I'm there for them.
Yeah. What's next for you? Anything fun?
Yeah. Well, some time off from this festival, which has been incredible, but I'm ready to take a break. The next big thing is Holly Shorts London,
which is in November,
December 6th through 8th.
December 6th through 8th. And where's it going to be?
We are going to be announcing our location soon.
Very cool. Are you doing any event?
You better get involved, man.
Well, I mean, I think we physically have to be, right? It's my home city.
I mean, where's the WeAudition component?
We're going to figure out a way because, you know, of course, like our members and your clients, our members, they all connect to all these different things, and we love seeing that. And like I said, you've got some great examples of very proactive and talented actors out there in your management company, and also the type of people that come to Holly Shorts. So like I personally will speak to the WeAudition community. You should engage with Holly Shorts. You should engage with Alta Global Entertainment and all the stuff all of the seminars you do, and everything's very valuable. So shout out to you for everything you do.
I'll do the actress thing with you guys.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. The business of acting, guys. We're coming for you.
Making some deals on here right now. Stephen, it's been so good to have you here. Thank you for all the knowledge and insight, and I really appreciate your time and having us involved in Holly Shorts as well.
It's been a lot of fun.
Cheers.
Talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the WeAudition Show. Your hosts were Darren Darnborough and me, Richard Cambridge, from WeAudition, the leading professional actors community where you can connect, learn, elevate your career, and always get a self-tape reader on demand. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're a WeAudition member, or even if you're not, we would love it if you could please subscribe to this podcast, as it really helps us. And if you have friends who might get value from this episode, please share the link with them. You can find us at weaudition.com or for your iPhone or iPad by searching WeAudition on the App Store. See you next time.